Once I learned that, I was like, oh my gosh, this unlocks a whole new world for me. 5 unconventional tips for you today that will definitely help you as a woman. How I live in flow with my cycle, so I'm working with my body and not against it. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Rebecca, your self-development sis, and I post self-development YouTube videos every single Sunday, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any going forward. I also have a podcast called the Rebecca Lee Podcast where I have dove deeper into some of these topics, especially around cycle syncing and women's hormones. So I'll link those episodes in the show notes below. Today, we are going to be talking about a topic that I am so extremely passionate about. I mean, I'm always passionate about these topics, but this one in particular, because it has changed my life. It has been the biggest game changer as a woman, so empowering to finally learn about my cycle and to know how my body feels and fluctuates at different points of the month and my cycle. And it's mind-blowing to me that we aren't taught this information like as kids and growing up, or even as adults. I learned this information a few years ago, and my life will never go back to how it was before I knew this information. So I'm excited to dive deeper with you on this topic today. I truly think that cycle syncing in a way that you might not expect, not just like, foods and workouts, but actually mentality and mindset shifts, has helped me live so much more of a happy and in flow life, like truly way more in my feminine energy, because feminine energy is all about being in flow and intuition and, working with your body and its natural flow and progression rather than against it. Because here's the thing, you guys, we live in a man's world, right? Men have a 24-hour hormonal cycle, literally like the sun. They wake up 24 hours, their hormones rise, go down. Every single day they're feeling the same like the sun. Whereas women, we're more like the moon. We're a 28-day cycle. So our hormones are going to be fluctuating and changing every single day throughout the month, depending what phase we're in. So once I learned about the different phases of my cycle and how I might be feeling and how I can utilize and best take advantage of each phase for the things that it brings me and how I can feel better during the phases that I might not feel as good in, now I'm not feeling like crap half the month, every single month. Now I'm not beating myself up for not feeling as productive and the same every day like a man would, because we're women, we have different superpowers, and we need to learn about it so we can take advantage of it. So let's just dive right into it with some basic info about our cycle. And like I said, in my podcast, I go more into detail about some of these topics. So I'm going to put those links in the description. But general overview, as women, we have 4 phases in our cycle. We have the menstrual, follicular, ovulatory, and luteal phase. So the menstrual phase is when we are on our period. It's the, first 3 to 7 days of our cycle. Then after that, we go into a follicular, which our estrogen starts to rise. We're starting to feel a bit better typically. Then we're ovulating. That's when estrogen's at its highest. And then the luteal phase after that is like the last 10 to 14 days of our cycle before our period, where the hormones start going down. Estrogen decreases, progesterone starts to rise, or it should rise. And that's when we start to feel more of the PMS and the dreaded luteal phase. Maybe you've seen all the different videos and stuff about it, how the luteal phase is literally the worst part of the month, which I completely understand. And I want to give you some tips as how we can make the luteal phase and that PMS a little bit better. So there's all different things that you can utilize during cycle syncing and using your cycle to give you clues and tips and insights on, what to do for your body based on where you're at in your cycle. I'm going to give some of my tips, a few unconventional things that have truly helped me. So feel free to take what works for you, leave what doesn't. And before I get all the questions in the comments, I track my cycle with my Flow app. So I can put the link to that in the show notes as well. I love my Flow app. It's super easy. Natural Cycles is also an amazing app to use, and you can use a thermometer with Natural Cycles as well. So you can track your basal body temperature and see where you're at in your cycle. So number 1, the first tip that helped me live more in flow with my body and my cycle was planning my social outings based on certain parts of my cycle. And this is all like loose general guidelines, by the way. It's not going to be like super, 100% or not, because of course we can't control, parties and things that come up at certain points in our cycle. But I started to become more mindful of, okay, I know that I feel way more extroverted when I'm in my follicular and ovulatory phase, especially when I'm ovulating. So I'm going to plan more of my social gatherings and, plan more dinners, plan more dates, plan more things during that time, because I know I'm naturally going to feel more excited to go do those things versus the week before my period or on my period, I might be feeling, more introverted, and it's more of a hassle to get me out the door and to be social versus when I'm ovulating, I'm like, let's go out, let's have fun. I want to meet people. So I will be intentional about planning those things during that phase of my cycle, and it makes the biggest difference. Like, I know I'm going to feel more hibernating, introverted during a certain period, but during ovulation, follicular, I'm like, let's go out. I'm hitting up my friends. I know I'm going to be ovulating next week. I'm going to make plans. Let's go out to dinner Wednesday. Let's do a date Thursday. Like, that is such a good feeling because I know how I'm going to be feeling more or less. Number 2, this one is huge for cycle syncing and how it's changed my life, is that I've learned how to have more self-compassion for myself during the phases that I might not be as productive as I might be during other phases. So for example, I know that the second half of my luteal phase and going into the beginning of my period and my menstrual phase, I might not be feeling as energetic. I might not be feeling, as productive. I might not be feeling, like I said, as extroverted. So I'm not going to beat myself up for my natural human biology, for being a woman. And that's where I think a lot of women get, caught up and really down on themselves, is they'll beat themselves up for not being as productive or having the best workouts or, being your best self during certain parts of your cycle when you're really not supposed to be. There's certain times where you're supposed to be resting more, especially on the first few days of my period. That's a must to be resting more. I used to be somebody that was extremely hard on myself and very driven and motivated and a hard worker. And don't get me wrong, I still am. But I used to get so down on myself for not being the best all the time until I realized that my biology doesn't support that. So why would I beat myself up for something that's completely natural when instead I can show myself compassion, honor my body and what it needs in those phases of my cycle, and then I'm going to come back 10 times better afterwards. I'm going to come back 10 times harder because I listened to my body and I didn't beat myself up for things that are just naturally outside of my control. So that goes into tip number 3, which is learning to push myself more in the phases that I know I'm going to have more energy and the phases that I know I'm feeling better versus the phases I'm not. So some tangible examples. When I'm in my follicular phase, or I'm at the end of my period, or I'm in my ovulation, I know I can push myself more when it comes to workouts, for example, right? If I'm in the gym and I know that, okay, I'm ovulating right now, which I am ovulating right now, actually, I'm going to push myself a little bit more like, okay, let's get your butt to the gym. You're just being lazy. Let's go. Let's work harder. Come on, let's go. I know your body right now can handle more of it. Versus if I'm in my luteal in the second half of my period, my luteal phase, a few days up leading up to my period, first few days of my period, I'm not going to push myself as hard. I might still go to the gym. I might go for a walk. I might do lighter intense workouts. I might take a more easy workout at the gym, but I'm not going to be as hard on myself about it. I'm going to infuse that feminine energy and be like, okay, my hormones are not at optimal peak right now. So why would I stress my body more when my body's already kind of in a more sensitive, vulnerable state? So you can start to manipulate certain things in your life, like plan more workout classes during the phases that you know you're going to have more energy to push yourself. Or something that I love to do, being a woman entrepreneur, I'm going to plan more of my filming days around my follicular and ovulation phase. And I might honestly not film as much that week leading up to my period or the first few days of my period when I know I'm not really going to be, as vibrant on camera as maybe I would like to be. That's some tangible examples. And obviously I know that, we can't always control these things, right? We have to go to work when people have 9-to-5 jobs. We have certain routines and schedules. This is not a hard, fast rule. Any of these tips. That's what I want to get across to you, is that It doesn't need to be 100% or nothing. I want you to start becoming more mindful of these things, because once you start just like having awareness around it, you can start to respond differently. You can plan accordingly. You can treat yourself kinder during the phases that you know you might need it. Tip number 4 was eating certain foods in certain points of my cycle to help with my PMS. So, tangible examples. I know that in my luteal phase, the phase leading up to my period, I'm going to eat certain foods that are really good for my body to help eliminate excess estrogen. So therefore, I have less PMS, less cramps, better period overall. Some tangible things that you can start eating for that phase to help with excess estrogen elimination. Raw carrots, which, by the way, eating raw carrots every day is great for your hormones, but especially during the luteal phase. Broccoli sprouts and broccoli and cruciferous vegetables in general are great for that liver detoxification. High fiber, anything with more fiber in it. So beans, legumes, vegetables, fruits, anything that helps the liver support in getting rid of that excess estrogen. So raw carrots are a must for me. Broccoli sprouts, cruciferous vegetables in general, and just eating more fiber. Those are all foods that help get rid of that excess estrogen that can lead to worse PMS and periods, and eating it during your luteal phase can really help with that. There's so many other tangible tools and tips and cycle syncing things you could learn about when it comes to the foods. These are just a few things that have helped me personally. And lastly, tip number 5 to use your cycle to live in flow with your cycle is to change the narrative around the way you see your period and your cycle in general. I think society has a really negative connotation and a lot of shame that's based in it, when in actuality, I believe personally that our periods can be a superpower. We are most intuitive and we can connect deeper to ourselves when we're in our menstrual phase. And once I learned that, I was like, oh my gosh, this unlocks a whole new world for me. Because now I'm like, okay, I'm on my period. I got my period. I'm going to get my cacao. I'm going to do a little cacao ritual with myself. I'm going to journal. I'm going to connect deeper with myself. I'm going to spend more time alone. I'm going to meditate more. I'm going to learn more about myself and connect deeper to my higher self, to my intuition, to my guides, so that I can use this information and all this juicy time that I've spent dedicating to my connection with myself to then fuel the rest of my cycle, so that I can take action when I'm more energetic in my follicular and ovulation phase, for example. But I start to change the mindset I have around my cycle to seeing it as my superpower and taking advantage of my intuition more during my menstrual, taking advantage of the energy during follicular, taking advantage of my social energy during the ovulation. Like, there's certain things that you can kind of get from each phase. And once you tap into it, you will feel so much more connected to yourself, so much more in flow, and just so much more empowered in general. So thank you so much for watching today's video. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future Sunday self-development videos, and I'll catch you in the next one.